So this week's episode of Fruits Basket, I just once again appreciate the simplistic beauty to the show's writing and how you can have an episode feel emotionally gripping by just having a couple of characters feel rather down and confused about their current emotions, and that can lend for incredibly interesting storytelling. So our characters go on a little vacation, but this vacation, of course, because you're with the Somas and you have someone as precious as Tohru, it's not just going to be them, splashing around in the water and having fun. There's going to be a little bit of confusion and drama to sprinkle it all around. And it's interesting because we have Kyo as well as Yuki, who are both dealing with something different. For Yuki, he knows that that baseball cap was actually his from the past, and he doesn't know how to bring that up to Tohru, and would that change their current relationship? Would the past even matter like it clearly did for him? And for Kyo, we don't know exactly what's going on, but he seemingly has quite a bit of guilt since going to the graveyard. And it's interesting seeing Tohru, who's someone who values what she currently has, because deep down she's terrified of losing any more people. That's why she constantly is so afraid of colds, because she doesn't want what happened to her father, who had a normal cold that went into ammonia and then just killed him, to happen to anyone. And she just sees someone being upset and she'll naturally blame herself, because that's the only conclusion she can come to, because these boys don't always admit their feelings. And it's interesting how just from pretty much day one, around episode 3 onwards, anytime these characters needed to go on the correct path, Tohru naturally guided them down that path. Eventually, without her even trying, they just naturally would follow her. Kyo very early on started to just obey whatever Tohru asked. Kyo is not someone who would naturally put himself out there and put himself in situations that naturally make him uncomfortable, but if Tohru requests it, he absolutely will just do it because he likes Tohru and wants her to be happy. And it's really interesting in this episode how immediately Tohru recognizes something's bad, but it's interesting that as soon as she admits that she feels like she's guilty and she's apologizing, their tone immediately shifts, because the last thing they would ever want is for her to blame herself for the way they're feeling, because they both probably blame themselves for different reasons from the past, but just in the present, like, Tohru is like the most important person to them. If she's feeling bad, they're gonna feel even worse. And I love how they just immediately start arguing with one another after they fall off the cliff there, and it's not like they were trying to put on the act, they just naturally felt comfortable again. They were so focused and lost in their own thoughts, worrying about the past, that they forgot about the present, and once Tohru kind of slipped and fell, immediately they just went back to normal without even trying. It's so interesting how she can just bring out their true desires and emotions, where in the early stages we used to worry about them bickering and fighting, but now, like Tohru, when they do that, it means they're comfortable and they're not feeling down and depressed, and it makes us feel relieved and laughing and grinning alongside Tohru. And it's really interesting but subtle development that continues to be very important throughout the journey of Fruits Basket. And when, once again, Tohru looks like she may be down, they immediately will be like, no, we're arguing because we hate each other. We're not mad at you. And it just makes her even more happy that they're recognizing her own feelings, but also recognizing that they were also feeling maybe a little too down, and she's just glad that they're having fun again, because for them, in their own sick and twisted way, arguing and bickering at each other about how much they hate each other is actually the healthiest thing for them right now, which is something we wouldn't say in the early stages, but it's interesting to see the growth nonetheless. It's quite fun seeing Aya and just, Hattori as well as Shigure all in this episode as well, kind of tagging along during the vacation, and how, once again, the whole marriage fiasco is kind of brought back up because his old love interest did get married, and it's interesting the direction they took with it, because for someone like Aya, who's going to say, obviously, you deserve love, you should try to get her memories back because you deserve this, and yeah, I can agree with him, but at the same time, it's interesting how Hattori just kind of pushes back against it and feels like, for someone as cursed as him, it feels as if maybe that short burst of happiness is all they can have, and at the same time, he's more worried about someone like Tohru, Yuki, and Kyo. He's had that smile, others have had that smile. It can easily turn to sour frowns and just pain, especially if someone like Agito gets their hands on them, or just the curse naturally takes hold and screws over their relationship. Pretty much every character in Fruits Basket, from Tohru to any of the Somas, they don't understand their own feelings well enough, and they do need help from others to help guide them down the correct path. But I do really like where Hattori went over this episode, because from pretty much minute 1, we're seeing that Shigure, even though he has admitted to wanting to manipulate Tohru, he does have friends and just family that he really values, and the fact that he brought him along just reading material, that he could just finally relax on a day that would probably be quite painful for him, really shows just their deep bond and friendship overall. And it was very fun seeing just that conversation towards the end play out, because you see someone who deserves love, and based on that kind of frame at the end of the episode with the teacher, it seems like maybe that could be the direction his love could head in, or maybe it'll be someone completely different. But this is someone who's trying to convince himself that he can't have love anymore, but he can. It's just maybe this one just wasn't meant to be, even though he loved it for the time being. But there's always more people out there, and there's always more bonds that he can form. And it was interesting to see just that subtle but plot point throughout this episode be so memorable and such a great episode overall. This episode's entire purpose to me was to feel almost like, because last week we got a lot of subtle clues of what's going to happen throughout this story. Some probably will be sooner than others, but it's interesting how this episode served as sort of a breathing room episode, slow down the pace, but let the characters recover enough so we don't have to just jump into the next plot point. We don't have to just jump into the hat being a significant plot point. We can have the hat arc later, but we don't need it right this minute. But based on last week's episode, you would think we would. Based on Kyo's comments towards Tohru, you would think we have to touch upon this right now, but we don't. And this episode served as a great purpose of slowing things down and letting the characters recover. Maybe settle down with their thoughts. Maybe it's not really the time for them to really just sit in their own sorrow and their own questions and just have fun with Tohru on vacation and have the moment to just decompress. When the time's right, they'll bring up the hat. When the time's right, they'll bring up Kyo's feelings towards the graveyard. And that's the importance of this series and how it's not just snapping from plot point to plot point. This is a slice of life of the Somas and Tohru and where their life will go, the dramatic, the comedy, wherever they want to go. And to bring up such big clues and just revelations in last week's episode, it was important to have an episode such as this that allows you to say, we don't need to touch upon these plot points right now. We can actually shift to a different character, a different sub-arc, or we could jump into the hat story or something like that, but it's fine if we take our time because Tohru naturally let them be themselves and they realized that maybe they were getting too lost in their own head and they should focus on what's important currently, which would be Tohru and this vacation. That's incredibly important. The overall comedy to this episode was quite subtle, but it was pretty effective because of just how gloomy most of the characters were acting, and to have the ridiculous shenanigans pop up, it was a nice kind of like, okay, I was getting a little too lost in thought here alongside Kyo and Yuki. It's nice to have some pretty ridiculous reactions. And I mean, whenever you have Aya, of course, you're going to have some ridiculous shenanigans. And just, I love that very last shot where he tries to be more forward with his brother. And just, you can hear that he got his ass handed to him, but just the reactions of being like, did he really just try to say, I'm your older brother, you have to obey me, towards someone like Yuki? That isn't going to work out too well. I love Fruits Basket. It can just blend, in my opinion, it kind of blends the natural everyday life that we experience. Even when shit's horrible around us, there will naturally be someone or something around us that will be pleasant or just funny. Even if you're not personally laughing, it will be around you. And it feels like Fruits Basket's aura is that even if the current perspective is something serious or something funny or just something just pretty slice of life and basic, there's always other things around them that actually brings out a very human atmosphere that feels quite realistic, but obviously animified to make it a lot more entertaining than just general life. And that's a really important aspect to this series, that without the constant just shifts in tone and just all the characters and personalities and motivations, it would feel like a one-trick pony. But because we have so much to this show, but it doesn't feel like it's too much that it kind of like murks up the water and it makes it feel like it's too polluted. It feels just natural, pure, and like there's always something happening, but everything that is happening has some form of depth to it, so it's not just a one-trick pony. This episode was just really memorable. In fact, it was one of the most memorable episodes probably across the 15 episodes, just because I didn't think you would be able to slow down the cliffhanger after last week, both with the hat as well as the graveyard, and make me come out saying, yeah, we don't need to touch upon those right now. It's fine to take our time getting to those plot points, because seeing what Tohru, Yuki, and Kyo did in this episode and just where the relationship kind of went, highlighting how much they have grown and just developed over just such a short runtime and how much further we still have to grow and develop with them, it really highlights the fact that they've really done a remarkable job with the character writing, and the fact that we can slow things down after being so sped up and just feel like it's okay to do other things. It just makes me incredibly happy that something like Fruits Basket is getting a complete adaptation, a proper adaptation that's not just making it in to be a joke all the time, but actually bringing to life what the author had in their mind this entire time. This episode and just story overall has been incredibly gripping, and I just love how every single character, if you like them on a surface level, they continue to be fun at their surface level, but the more you learn with them and the more you grow, the deeper and just more meaningful their character becomes. And it's why I'm probably going to do quite a few Fruits Basket videos outside of the episodics. I really feel like as the 3 seasons or so we're going to get of this show, I'll probably dive into most of these characters and do some form of analysis on it. I'll probably start with Tohru just because I just love how perfectly flawed she is and how on a surface level she seems so perfect, but really she's actually one of the most flawed characters we see in this show. So if you do enjoy these episodic reviews, definitely keep an eye on the channel even if Fruits Basket isn't airing, because I'll probably do more Fruits Basket analysis type content throughout the run of both the first season, the second season, and most likely the third season when it eventually comes out. But yeah, this was a great episode overall. Very pleasant, very slow things down, but also speed things up in a very strange but fitting way, just with our central cast, but even throwing back to some of the side casts that we haven't seen for a little bit, re-highlighting the wedding, showing that no plot point is basic and forgettable. They all have meat and substance to the characters at hand. But let me know what everyone thought of this week's episode of Fruits Basket. Do you love it? Do you hate? Your favorite moment? Whatever you feel, and let me know. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and also hit that subscribe button if you have any news. So until next time, everyone, please take care. Have a good one.